On January 14, 2026, a Danish delegation was in Washington for a high-level meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The central topic was one of the most delicate issues in today's geopolitics: President Donald Trump's renewed pressure over Greenland. After the meeting, the Danish assessment was clear and straightforward. Trump is not joking. He effectively wants to take full control of the island, and his public statements claiming he will get Greenland the easy way or the hard way sound less like diplomacy and more like a mafia-style ultimatum. This stance triggered an immediate reaction in Europe, which went into diplomatic emergency mode. Countries such as Germany, Sweden, Norway, and France announced the deployment of military contingents to Greenland, initially under the pretext of observation missions, reconnaissance, and joint exercises. However, European leaders made it explicit that the option of deploying actual combat forces remains on the table if the escalation continues. This situation raises inevitable and profound questions. Can Trump really attack Greenland? And if he does, would that mean the end of NATO as we know it? For many, Greenland evokes images of vast icy expanses, Arctic isolation, and a resilient Inuit population living under extreme conditions. With a population of only about 56,000 people spread across an area of more than 772,000 square miles, making it the largest island in the world, it seems like a quiet place, far removed from international intrigue. However, for military and geopolitical strategists, Greenland is an invaluable asset, a natural aircraft carrier anchored in the Arctic, strategically positioned between North America, Europe, and the routes leading to the Russian Arctic. U.S. interest in Greenland is nothing new. It goes back to the 19th century, when in 1867 Secretary of State William Seward, famous for purchasing Alaska from Russia, considered acquiring the island from Denmark. The idea gained traction during World War II, when the United States, fearing a Nazi invasion, occupied Greenland in 1941 under the pretext of hemispheric protection. After the war, in 1946, President Harry Truman formally offered Denmark $100 million to purchase the island, a proposal that was rejected. Instead, in 1951, the Greenland Defense Agreement was signed, allowing the United States to establish military bases on the island in exchange for Danish protection. This presence culminated in the construction of Thule Air Base, now renamed Pituffik Space Base, in 1951. Located just 930 miles from the North Pole, Pituffik is the northernmost U.S. military installation, equipped with advanced radars, early warning sensors for intercontinental ballistic missiles, and space surveillance systems. It is part of the North American Early Warning System and is crucial for monitoring threats from Russia and China in the Arctic. As global warming accelerates the melting of the polar ice caps, Greenland loses about 270 billion tons of ice per year. According to NASA data, new maritime routes are opening up, such as the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route. These routes could reduce shipping time between Asia and Europe by up to 40%, turning the Arctic into a zone of economic and military competition. In addition, the island is rich in rare mineral resources, including rare earths, uranium, zinc, gold, and possibly offshore oil. Greenland is estimated to hold 10% of the world's rare earth reserves, making it a prize for nations such as China, which dominates 60% of global production of these minerals. During his first administration, Trump had already expressed interest in buying Greenland in 2019, calling it a large real estate deal and arguing that Denmark was losing money on it. That statement caused a diplomatic uproar, leading Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen to call the idea absurd. Now in 2026, with Trump back in the White House after his 2024 victory, the rhetoric has escalated into veiled threats. Trump is not merely making formal acquisition proposals, he is raising the stakes, publicly declaring that the United States will get Greenland one way or another. This calculated ambiguity is a classic Trumpian negotiating tactic. If Denmark yields concessions, such as greater access to resources or expanded bases, he will proclaim a historic deal. If Denmark resists, Trump can claim the Danes forced an escalation, thereby justifying more aggressive actions. This kind of language echoes historical crises that preceded conflicts, such as Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 or the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Greenland has enjoyed significant autonomy since 1979, with its own government responsible for internal affairs, including education, healthcare, and natural resources. However, defense and foreign policy remain under Danish jurisdiction, as the island is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, along with the Faroe Islands. Greenlanders have the right to self-determination, recognized by the UN, and recent polls show that more than 70% of the population prefers to maintain ties with Denmark, although there is a growing movement for full independence, driven by figures such as former Prime Minister Alika Hammond. The 1951 agreement allows the United States to expand its military presence in Greenland without the need for annexation. During the Cold War, the Americans operated up to 21 bases, including secret facilities such as Project Iceworm, a failed attempt to build a network of nuclear tunnels beneath the ice. Today, Patuffik hosts around 150 U.S. service members and is vital to the U.S. Space Force, monitoring satellites and space debris. If Trump only wanted to reinforce national security, he could reopen closed bases or increase troop levels without violating treaties. But his intentions go further. He seeks to replace Danish sovereignty with direct American control, possibly annexing the island as a U.S. territory, similar to Puerto Rico or Guam. This would involve exploiting mineral resources without Danish restrictions, which banned uranium mining in 2021 over environmental concerns, although there is growing pressure to lift the ban due to global demand for nuclear energy. Now the crucial question, can Trump really attack? Technically, yes. The United States has overwhelming military superiority. An operation could involve deploying Marine Corps units or SEAL Special Forces to seize key points such as Patuffik, Nuuk, and strategic ports. Greenland has no armed forces of its own. Its defense relies on roughly 200 Danish soldiers from the Arctic Command, supported by ships of the Royal Danish Navy. An invasion would be swift, with logistics facilitated by the proximity of U.S. bases in Canada and Iceland. However, the operational cost would be minimal compared to the political one. Attacking a founding NATO ally, Denmark has been a member since 1949, would be seen as a betrayal of Article 5, which stipulates collective defense. This would implode the alliance, eroding the mutual trust that sustains it. Countries such as Poland, the Baltic states, and Ukraine, already uneasy about Russia, would question the American commitment. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk warned that such an action would be the end of the world as we have known it since 1945, referring to the post-World War II order. The international reaction would be devastating. The European Union, of which Denmark is a member, would impose economic sanctions on the United States, affecting $1 trillion in annual transatlantic trade. China and Russia would exploit the vacuum, with Beijing already investing in Greenlandic projects such as rare earth mines, and Moscow expanding its Arctic presence with bases like Nagorskoye. Trump's narrative about Chinese warships all over Greenland was debunked by Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen during the meeting with Vance and Rubio. Rasmussen stated that the last Chinese vessel in the region was more than a decade ago based on Danish and Allied intelligence. Nevertheless, China's interests are growing. In 2018, it attempted to finance airports on the island, a proposal blocked over security concerns. Russia, in turn, conducts military exercises in the Arctic, with nuclear submarines and bombers flying over the region, testing NATO's defenses. Domestically in the United States, Congress could intervene. The Constitution grants the President authority as Commander-in-Chief, but Congress controls budgets and declarations of war. Under the 1973 War Powers Act, Trump would have 60 days to justify a military action, after which Congress could force a withdrawal. With Republicans controlling the House and the Senate in 2026, after gains in the 2022 and 2024 midterms, opponents such as Senators Mitt Romney and Lisa Murkowski have already criticized the idea, calling it imperialist madness. However, the Trumpist base within the party could delay resolutions, allowing executive actions to move forward. Historically, presidents such as Reagan, who ordered the invasion of Grenada in 1983, and Obama, with the 2011 airstrikes in Libya, bypassed Congress in limited operations. The most likely scenario is not an open invasion, but multifaceted coercion. Trump is a master of economic pressure. He could impose tariffs on Danish exports, such as pharmaceuticals or consumer goods, invoking Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which allows tariffs on national security grounds. Diplomatic blackmail could include threats to withdraw U.S. troops from Europe or to boycott NATO summits. A war of narratives is already underway, with Trump amplifying fears of Chinese infiltration through social media and Fox News. Greenland, in turn, is pushing back. Greenlandic Prime Minister Mute Egede reiterated in January 2026 that the island will remain within the Kingdom of Denmark, with the support of 3/4 of the population. Polls by the Greenlandic Institute of Social Research show that while 40% favor long-term independence, the majority view Denmark as a protector against external powers. If Trump persists, the implications for NATO would be catastrophic. The alliance, founded in 1949 to contain Soviet communism, has evolved to combat terrorism, cyber threats, and hybrid aggression. An attack on Denmark would kill NATO's spirit, turning Article 5 into a relic. European countries would accelerate defense autonomy. The European Union is already investing in the European Defense Fund, and nations such as France and Germany are pushing the European Intervention Initiative. Sweden and Finland, new NATO members since 2023 and 2024 respectively, have sent forces to exercises in Greenland, signaling solidarity. Norway, with its Arctic border, has increased naval patrols, while France, with polar capabilities through its navy, has positioned ships in the North Atlantic. Economically, the crisis could trigger global volatility. The United States imports $500 million in goods from Denmark annually, while exporting $3 billion. Mutual sanctions would disrupt supply chains, driving up commodity prices. In the Arctic, competition for resources would intensify. The Arctic Council, an intergovernmental forum, is already grappling with tensions among the US, Russia, and China. An American annexation would violate the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which the US has not ratified but largely respects, as well as the principle of territorial integrity enshrined in the UN Charter. Environmentally, Greenland is ground zero for climate change. The melting contributes about 0.7 millimeters per year to global sea level rise, threatening coastal cities worldwide. American mineral exploitation could accelerate degradation, with risks of toxic leaks in fragile ecosystems, affecting species such as polar bears and seals. Activists like Greenpeace are already protesting, calling Trump's pressure climate colonialism. Culturally, the Inuit, who make up 90% of the population, see the island as Nunaat, their ancestral land. Any annexation would ignore treaties such as the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which guarantees self-determination. Stories of past abuses, such as the forced relocation of Inuit communities to build Thule in 1953, fuel distrust. In summary, while a direct invasion is possible but would destroy American credibility, Trump is more likely to opt for subtle coercion. Greenland is not just ice, it is the epicenter where the West tests its cohesion. If pressure turns into occupation, NATO collapses, and the post-1945 world, built on alliances and international norms, evaporates. As Rasmussen said during the meeting, "We were unable to change the American position, but we made it clear that this is not in the interest of the kingdom. We want respectful cooperation based on NATO solidarity against malign forces such as communism, terrorism, and aggressions that break the international order." If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure to check out this video on the screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.